When the flight attendant questioned her seat, she stayed calm. What happened next left the entire cabin speechless. The morning sunlight poured through the window of a modest two-bedroom home in Raleigh, North Carolina. As Mia sat at the kitchen table, her face lit with a mix of disbelief and excitement. Her acceptance letter to the University of California, Berkeley, lay in front of her, a dream that she'd worked tirelessly to achieve. Her father, Jeremiah, stood across from her with his hands on his hips, a proud grin spreading across his face. "You've done it, baby girl," Jeremiah said, his voice warm and steady. "I told you all that late-night studying would pay off. Now look at you, about to take on Berkeley." Mia looked up at her dad, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't have done it without you, Dad. You never stopped believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Jeremiah chuckled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's what parents are for. But listen, I've got one more surprise for you." Mia tilted her head, curious. Jeremiah walked over to the counter and picked up an envelope. He handed it to her with a playful wink. "Go on, open it," he urged. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tore open the envelope. Inside was a plane ticket, first class. Her mouth dropped open as she processed what she was looking at. "Wait, this is for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yup," Jeremiah said proudly. "You've earned it. I wanted your first flight to Berkeley to be special, and first class is the way to do it. You've worked hard, and you deserve to feel like the queen you are." Mia's laughter bubbled out, a mix of joy and disbelief. "Dad, this is way too much." "Nothing's too much for my baby girl," he said, leaning in to give her a hug. "Now pack your bags. Your flight's tomorrow." That night, Mia could barely sleep. She wasn't just excited about starting college. The thought of flying first class for the first time added a layer of anticipation she couldn't shake. Her dad had always worked hard to make her feel special, but this was next level. As she lay in bed, she thought about everything her dad had sacrificed for her. A self-made man who started his own small logistics company, Jeremiah had built their lives on sheer determination and grit. He didn't flaunt his success. Instead, he lived simply, focusing on giving Mia the life she deserved. But tomorrow wasn't just about a flight. It was a symbol of how far they had come together, a celebration of their bond and the dreams they had worked so hard to achieve. But as Mia would soon discover, not everyone was ready to celebrate with her. The next morning, Mia stood in line at Raleigh-Durham International Airport, clutching her carry-on bag and ticket. She wore her favorite pair of sneakers, some comfy jeans, and a sweatshirt from her high school's debate team, a simple outfit that matched her laid-back personality. She wasn't one to dress up just for appearances, especially for a long flight. The airport buzzed with activity, but Mia's excitement kept her laser-focused on the experience ahead. She couldn't help but smile every time she looked at the bold "First Class" printed on her ticket. Her dad had dropped her off at the airport with a heartfelt hug and a reminder, "Keep your head high, Mia. You belong everywhere your dreams take you." When it was finally her turn to board, Mia handed her ticket to the gate agent, who scanned it without a second glance and waved her through. She felt her heart flutter as she walked down the jet bridge, taking in every moment. Stepping onto the plane, she looked around at the sleek interior of the first-class cabin. Plush leather seats, wide aisles, and attentive flight attendants moving efficiently to assist passengers. It all felt surreal. Mia found her seat near the window, her excitement bubbling over as she stowed her bag and settled in. But her joy was cut short when one of the flight attendants, a woman in her early 40s with a perfectly pressed uniform and a tight smile, stopped beside her seat. "Excuse me," the flight attendant said, her tone polite but clipped. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Mia looked up, startled. "Yes, this is 3A, right?" The attendant nodded, glancing down at the ticket in Mia's hand. "It is, but this is first class." She hesitated, her eyes scanning Mia's casual outfit. "Let me double-check your ticket. Sometimes there are mix-ups." Mia's cheeks flushed. "There's no mix-up. My dad bought this ticket for me." The attendant's polite facade began to crack. "I understand, but first-class tickets aren't cheap. Maybe you're supposed to be in economy. I'll check the manifest." Passengers nearby began to shift in their seats, sensing the awkward tension. Mia felt their eyes on her, some sympathetic, others simply curious. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," Mia said firmly, trying to keep her voice steady. But the attendant wasn't convinced. She turned toward the galley, muttering something under her breath, and returned moments later with another flight attendant. By now, Mia could feel her heart pounding. The situation was spiraling out of control, and she wasn't sure how to handle it. The second flight attendant leaned down and whispered something to the first, glancing quickly at Mia before walking away. But instead of de-escalating, the first attendant turned back to Mia. "Listen," she said, lowering her voice but not her condescension. "If you can't produce proof that this ticket belongs to you, we'll have to move you to the back." Mia's throat tightened. Proof? Her ticket had already been scanned at the gate. What else did she need? But just as Mia opened her mouth to respond, another voice joined the conversation, a voice that would change everything. "Is there a problem here?" The voice was calm yet commanding, and it came from behind the flight attendant. Everyone in the first-class cabin turned to see the captain of the flight standing in the aisle, his hat tucked under one arm. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and an air of authority that immediately quieted the growing murmurs around them. The flight attendant straightened her posture, her professional demeanor snapping back into place. "Captain, I was just verifying this passenger's seating assignment. There seems to be some confusion about her being in first class." The captain's sharp eyes shifted to Mia, who was sitting frozen in her seat, gripping her armrest. Then, to everyone's surprise, his face softened, and a smile broke across his features. "Mia," he said warmly, addressing her by name. "Good to see you. I had a feeling you'd be on this flight today." The room felt like it collectively held its breath. The flight attendant's eyes widened slightly, her confidence visibly shaken. Mia blinked, unsure how to respond. Hi?" she said hesitantly, still processing the shift in tone. The captain turned to the attendant. "Is there a reason you're questioning this young lady's seat?" His voice was polite, but there was an edge to it that made it clear he wasn't asking casually. The flight attendant hesitated. "Well, it's just that she didn't look like—" She stopped herself, realizing too late how her words might sound. I just wanted to confirm her ticket." The captain's expression hardened slightly. "Her ticket was scanned at the gate, wasn't it?" "Yes, Captain," the attendant admitted, her voice quieter now. "Then that should have been the end of it," he replied firmly. "Mia is exactly where she's supposed to be." Mia glanced around the cabin, feeling the weight of the passengers' stares. Some were leaning forward, clearly engrossed in the drama, while others exchanged looks of discomfort. The captain turned back to Mia with a reassuring smile. "How's your dad doing? Jeremiah and I go way back." Mia's jaw dropped slightly. "Wait, you know my dad?" "Of course," the captain said. "Your father built this airline from the ground up. He's the reason I'm here, and the reason this plane is even in the air today. I've been flying for him for over a decade." The room went silent. The flight attendant's face paled as the weight of her mistake began to sink in. I'm so sorry," she stammered, looking at Mia. "I didn't realize—" The captain held up a hand, cutting her off. "What you didn't realize," he said, his voice steady, "is that every passenger deserves to be treated with respect, no matter what they look like or how they're dressed. Mia shouldn't have had to explain herself to you. Her ticket was all the proof you needed." Mia felt a mix of emotions, embarrassment, relief, and something deeper, a sense of pride in the man who had raised her. But before she could respond, the captain wasn't done. He turned back to the flight attendant with a pointed look that made it clear this conversation was far from over. The captain's gaze lingered on the flight attendant, his calm demeanor unshaken, but his words carried unmistakable weight. "This airline represents more than just a company," he said. It's a reflection of the values Jeremiah built it on: respect, kindness, and treating every passenger like they matter. Clearly, that's a message that got lost here. The flight attendant's mouth opened, as if to respond, but no words came out. She glanced at Mia, her expression now a mix of regret and discomfort. The murmurs among the other passengers grew louder, some whispering to one another, clearly astonished by what they were witnessing. Mia, still processing the revelation, finally found her voice. "Wait," she said, looking from the captain to the flight attendant. "Are you saying my dad owns this airline?" The captain chuckled, his warm smile returning. "That's exactly what I'm saying. Your dad's not just the owner, he's the one who started it all. Every flight, every crew member, every seat on this plane, none of it would exist without him. And trust me, he makes it his business to know that every passenger is treated with the same respect he's worked so hard to earn in life." The flight attendant's shoulders slumped as the truth settled in. I didn't mean any harm," she said softly, avoiding Mia's eyes. "I was just trying to follow procedure." "Following procedure doesn't mean making assumptions about someone," the captain said firmly. "You've worked in this business long enough to know better." Mia looked at the flight attendant, her emotions swirling. She wanted to be angry, but the woman's remorse was clear. "It's not about the seat," Mia said quietly, breaking the silence. "It's about how I was made to feel, like I didn't belong here, like I had to prove I deserved to be treated like everyone else." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Several passengers nodded subtly, their expressions showing they understood exactly what she meant. The flight attendant's face reddened. "I'm truly sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't thinking. I shouldn't have made you feel that way." The captain turned to Mia. "Your dad would be proud of how you've handled yourself," he said. "You stayed calm, and you spoke up for yourself when it mattered. That takes strength." Mia felt her heart swell at his words. Despite the embarrassment of the situation, she realized it had given her a chance to stand in her truth and to see firsthand the impact of her father's work. But before anyone could settle back into their seats, the captain stepped forward with one final lesson that would stay with everyone in the cabin. The captain stepped into the aisle, addressing not just the flight attendant, but everyone in the cabin. His voice carried a quiet authority, the kind that made people listen without needing to raise his tone. "This moment is a reminder for all of us," he began. "We live in a world where it's easy to judge people based on how they look, what they wear, or where they come from. But every person on this plane has a story, and every one of you belongs here, whether you're in first class, economy, or anywhere in between. The seat you're in doesn't define your worth. How you treat others does." The cabin fell silent, every passenger riveted by his words. Even the ones who had been watching passively now seemed to lean in, their faces reflecting a mix of curiosity and reflection. He turned to the flight attendant, who stood with her head bowed, her hands clasped in front of her. "Mistakes happen," he continued. "But the important thing is how we learn from them. This airline was built on respect, and it's our job, every one of us, to carry that forward. Do you understand?" "Yes, Captain," she replied quietly, her voice trembling with sincerity. "I do, and I truly apologize, not just to Mia, but to everyone here. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment, and I'll do better." The captain nodded, and then turned back to Mia. "I hope this hasn't ruined your excitement for your trip," he said with a smile. "Your dad would want you to enjoy every second of it. And just so you know, he's incredibly proud of you. He talks about you every chance he gets." Mia's cheeks flushed as she smiled, the tension in her chest beginning to loosen. "Thank you," she said softly. "And thank you for stepping in. It means a lot." He placed a hand on her shoulder briefly before addressing the rest of the cabin. "I think we've all learned something today. Let's move forward with kindness, and remember that we're all here for the same reason: to get to where we're going safely, together." With that, the captain stepped back into the cockpit, leaving a ripple of quiet conversations behind him. The flight attendant lingered for a moment, turning to Mia once more. "I can't change what I did," she said, her voice filled with genuine regret. "But I hope you'll let me make it up to you during this flight. Can I get you anything? Anything at all?" Mia looked at her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "A ginger ale would be nice," she said simply, her tone neutral but not unkind. The attendant nodded quickly and walked away, a subtle mix of relief and determination in her steps. Mia turned her gaze to the window, watching the runway outside. She felt the weight of the moment still sitting on her chest, but also a sense of pride. Her dad had taught her to stand tall, no matter what, and even when she felt out of place, she now knew she belonged wherever she chose to be. But the moment wasn't just about Mia. It was a lesson for everyone, a reminder that judgment is easy, but understanding takes effort. As the plane began to taxi down the runway, the hum of conversation in the cabin gradually faded. Mia leaned back in her seat, her heart finally starting to settle. She sipped the ginger ale the flight attendant had brought her, appreciating the quiet gesture of reconciliation. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was a start. She glanced at her phone, where she had a text from her dad waiting. "Have a great flight, baby girl. Call me when you land. Love you." She smiled, hearing his voice in her head as she reread the message. Her dad had always told her, "You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. Just remember who you are, and the rest will follow." Looking around the cabin, Mia noticed subtle changes. The passengers who had initially turned away in awkward silence now offered her small smiles or respectful nods. It wasn't much, but it felt like they had learned something from what had just unfolded. The flight attendant, too, moved through the aisle with a renewed sense of purpose, her demeanor softer and more attentive. As the plane lifted off the ground, Mia felt a wave of emotions wash over her: relief, gratitude, and a quiet determination. She wasn't just on a flight to Berkeley, she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one where she'd carry the lessons her father had taught her. To stand firm in her identity, to be proud of her journey, and to treat everyone with the dignity they deserve. This experience, though uncomfortable, had shown her how much work there was still to do, not just for herself, but for others who faced the same kinds of judgments. But she also realized something else. Change starts small. Sometimes it starts with a single person speaking up, or one moment of accountability that ripples outward. As she gazed out the window at the clouds below, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." We all carry biases, whether we realize it or not. The true measure of character is how we choose to confront them. Assumptions based on appearances are easy to make, but they often miss the full story. Respect, empathy, and kindness should be the default, not something earned through proof. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on how you treat others in your daily life. Challenge yourself to move past first impressions, listen more, and judge less. Share this story to remind others of the power of respect and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Let's work toward a world where everyone feels like they belong, no matter where they sit.